I was sitting in my kitchen in Charlotte, North Carolina, drinking my morning coffee at 6:47 a.m. when I noticed my wallet felt lighter than usual. After 68 years on this earth, 22 of them serving my country in uniform, you develop instincts. Small things that most people ignore become signals. And that morning, something was wrong. My name is Harold Eugene Patterson. I served 2 tours in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne Brigade, earned a Bronze Star, and spent the next 30 years building bridges and highways as a civil engineer for the state of North Carolina. I raised 2 children with my wife Dolores, God rest her soul, in this same house on Beatty's Ford Road since 1987. I've never missed a mortgage payment, never bounced a check, never asked anyone for anything I didn't earn. So when I opened my wallet and found my VA benefits card missing, I knew something was deeply wrong. Before I go any further, I need to ask you something. If you're watching this, please stay with me until the end. This story changed everything I thought I knew about family, about trust, and about the kind of evil that hides behind friendly smiles. If this resonates with you, tap that like button and subscribe to this channel. We're building something here, a community of people who understand that wisdom comes at a price. And while you're watching, drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time it is there. I'd love to know who's listening to an old veteran's story today. Now, where was I? The card. My VA benefits card. I searched everywhere that morning. I checked the pockets of every pair of pants I'd worn that week. I looked in the drawer where I keep important documents. I even checked under the couch cushions, thinking maybe it had fallen out when I sat down to watch the Panthers game on Sunday. Nothing. I live alone now. Dolores passed 4 years ago this October. Breast cancer took her in 8 months, from diagnosis to funeral. After 41 years of marriage, I had to learn how to exist in a house that suddenly felt 3 times too big. But I adapted. That's what soldiers do. We adapt and overcome. The thing is, when you live alone, you know where everything is. You know because nobody moves your things. Nobody borrows your scissors and forgets to put them back. Nobody uses your reading glasses and leaves them in the bathroom. Everything stays exactly where you put it. So when something goes missing, you pay attention. I sat back down at my kitchen table, the coffee growing cold in my mug, and I tried to remember the last time I'd used that card. It was Thursday, 6 days ago. I'd gone to the VA Medical Center on Tyvala Road for my regular checkup. Blood pressure still a little high, but controlled. Cholesterol numbers looking good. The doctor, a young woman named Patterson like me, no relation, said I was in remarkable shape for a man my age. I remember putting the card back in my wallet when I left. I'm certain of it. I have a system. Card goes in the second slot from the left, behind my driver's license, in front of my Medicare card. Always. For 12 years, always. But it wasn't there now. I tried to push the thought away. Maybe I was getting forgetful. Maybe the years were finally catching up. But even as I told myself that, I didn't believe it. I completed the New York Times crossword puzzle every single day, usually by noon. I could recite every battle I fought in, every man I lost, every bridge I helped build in my career. My memory was fine. Someone had taken that card. The thought was so uncomfortable that I actually got up and poured my cold coffee down the sink just to have something to do with my hands. Who would take it? And more importantly, why? My daughter Vanessa lives in Atlanta with her husband Marcus and their 3 kids. She's a pediatric surgeon at Emory. Hasn't needed money from me since she finished her residency 15 years ago. In fact, she's always trying to give me money, upgrade my car, pay for renovations I don't need. That girl worries about me too much. My son Terrence. I stopped at the sink, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. Terrence. He'd been over on Saturday. Came by to help me move some boxes from the garage to the attic. At least, That's what he said. We talked for maybe an hour, had some lemonade on the back porch. He seemed distracted, I remember thinking. Kept checking his phone. Laughed a little too loud at things that weren't funny. I chalked it up to stress from his job. He manages a car dealership out on Independence Boulevard. Said business had been slow lately. But now, no, I pushed the thought away again, harder this time. Not my son. Not Terrence. The boy I'd coached in Little League. The boy I'd taught to drive in that old Ford pickup. The boy who'd cried at his mother's funeral like his heart was breaking in half. He wouldn't steal from me, but the thought wouldn't leave. At 8:30 a.m., I did something I'd never done before. I went to my computer in the spare bedroom and pulled up the security camera footage. I'd installed the system 2 years ago after there'd been some break-ins in the neighborhood. 4 cameras: front door, back door, garage, and driveway. I'd never really looked at the footage much. Never had reason to. I scrolled back to Saturday. Found the moment Terrence's Cadillac pulled into my driveway at 2:15 p.m. Watched myself open the front door, hug my son, lead him inside. We disappeared from view of the cameras for the next hour and a half. Then I saw it. At 3:47 p.m., the garage camera caught movement. The door from the house to the garage opening slowly. Terrence stepping through, alone. I was probably in the kitchen getting more lemonade. I watched my son look around the garage, then walk directly to the workbench where I keep a small lockbox. The lockbox where I store backup documents, including a spare VA benefits card I'd requested last year when I thought I'd lost the original. I watched my son open that lockbox like he knew exactly where it was, like he'd been planning this. I watched him remove the card, slip it into his pocket, and walk back into the house like nothing had happened. The video was clear, unmistakable, time-stamped. My son had stolen from me. I sat in that chair for a long time. The computer screen eventually went dark, but I didn't move to wake it. I just sat there, feeling something collapse inside my chest that I didn't have a name for. In Vietnam, I watched friends die. I carried men through jungles while bullets cut the air around us. I held a 19-year-old kid from Mississippi while he bled out in my arms, calling for his mother. I thought I understood what pain felt like. I was wrong. This was different. This was my own blood, my own son. And the betrayal wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that something had gone so wrong in his life that he felt he couldn't come to me, that he'd rather steal from his 68-year-old father than ask for help. What kind of trouble was Terrence in? I needed to find out, but I also needed to be smart about it. In the Army, we had a saying, reconnaissance before action. You don't charge into enemy territory without knowing the terrain. You don't engage until you understand what you're facing. So I made a decision. I wouldn't confront Terrence, not yet. First, I would watch. I would listen. I would gather information. I called the VA that afternoon and reported the card stolen. They froze the account immediately and said they'd issue a new card within 7 to 10 business days. The woman on the phone asked if I wanted to file a police report. I said I'd think about it. Then I waited. 3 days later, Terrence called me. His voice was strange on the phone. Too casual. Too cheerful. Hey, Pop, just checking in. How you doing? Doing fine, son. Just fine. Good. Good. Hey, you need anything? I could come by this weekend. Help with that gutter that was giving you trouble. That would be nice, I said, keeping my voice steady. Come by Saturday. We'll have lunch. Sounds good, Pop. Love you. Love you too, son. I hung up the phone and felt sick to my stomach. Saturday came. Terrence arrived at noon, just like he'd promised. He hugged me at the front door, same as always. Smiled that same smile he'd had since he was a little boy. But I saw him differently now. I saw the way his eyes darted around the room. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The slight tremor in his hands when he thought I wasn't looking. My son was scared of something. Scared badly. We ate lunch on the back porch. Grilled chicken, collard greens, cornbread. Dolores' recipes. I watched Terrence eat like he hadn't had a meal in days, shoveling food into his mouth between sentences about the dealership, about sports, about nothing that mattered. Then his phone buzzed. I saw the change in his face, the color draining, the fork stopping halfway to his mouth. He glanced at the screen, and for just a moment, fear flickered across his features like lightning in a summer storm. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, Pop, fine. Just work stuff." He typed something quickly, then shoved the phone back in his pocket. But his appetite was gone. He pushed the food around his plate for a few more minutes before making excuses about needing to leave early. "Before you go," I said, standing up slowly, letting my old knees complain the way they always do. "I wanted to show you something in the garage." I saw the flash of panic in his eyes. Quick, almost hidden. But I'd spent 22 years reading men under pressure. I knew fear when I saw it. "Sure, Pop. What is it?" I led him to the garage. Walked slowly. Let the silence build. When we got to the workbench, I stopped in front of the lockbox. Didn't say anything. Just stood there. Terrence was sweating. I could see it on his forehead, even though the garage was cool. "Pop." "I know," I said quietly. I didn't turn around. "I know what you took." The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled tight. "I was going to put it back," Terrence said, his voice cracking. "I swear, Pop, I was going to put it back. But you didn't." I turned to face him now. My son, 42 years old, 6 feet tall, successful, or so I thought. And he looked like a little boy who'd been caught stealing cookies. "Why, Terrence? Why would you steal from your own father?" What came out of my son's mouth in the next 10 minutes broke my heart more than the theft itself. "It started 2 years ago," he said. "Gambling. Just small stuff at first. A weekend trip to Cherokee with some friends from work. Then online poker. Then sports betting. Then the app on his phone that let him place bets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He'd lost $40,000 in the first year. Cleaned out his savings. Maxed out 3 credit cards. Took a second mortgage on the house without telling his wife Denise. When that money was gone, he started borrowing. From who? I asked. Terrence couldn't meet my eyes. "A guy, Vincent. He's a business consultant. Has an office over on South Boulevard. A business consultant who loans money to gamblers? It's not like that, Pop. He helps people get back on their feet." How much do you owe him?" Terrence was silent. "How much, Terrence?" $87,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $87,000. My son owed $87,000 to a loan shark dressed up as a businessman. "And you thought stealing my VIA benefits would help with that?" He said. "Vincent said I could use the card to take out in advance. Some kind of benefit loan program. He has connections at the bank," he said. "He could process it fast, get me the money I needed, and I'd pay it back before you even noticed. There's no such program, Terrence. There's no benefit loan. You've been conned." My son's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked exactly like he had at 8 years old, when he'd fallen off his bike and skinned both knees. Lost, hurting, desperate for his father to make it better. But he wasn't 8 anymore, and this wasn't a skinned knee. "Give me his card," I said. "What?" "This Vincent. You must have his business card. Give it to me." Terrence reached into his wallet with trembling hands and pulled out a cream-colored card. "Vincent R. Chambers, Financial Solutions Group, with an address on South Boulevard and a phone number with a 704 area code." I took the card and looked at it for a long moment. Nice paper. Professional printing. Legitimate looking. The kind of card designed to make people trust you. "Go home, Terrence." "Bob, Go home." Don't contact this man again. Don't give him any more money. Don't do anything until you hear from me. What are you going to do? I looked at my son. This man I'd raised. This man I'd loved for 42 years. This man had betrayed my trust in the worst possible way. I'm going to make some calls, I said. And then we're going to fix this. Together. But Terrence, if you ever steal from me again, from anyone, I will personally drive you to the police station and watch them put you in handcuffs. Are we clear? Yes, Pop. Now go home. Hug your wife. Pray if you still remember how. And wait for me to call. After Terrence left, I sat in my garage for a long time, holding Vincent R. Chambers' business card. The afternoon light faded. The shadows grew long, and I thought about my next move. I'm 68 years old. I've got a torn rotator cuff from the war that still bothers me when it rains. My knees aren't what they used to be, but my mind is sharp. My network is strong. And I've spent my whole life solving problems that other people said couldn't be solved. This Vincent had picked the wrong family to prey on. The next morning, I started my reconnaissance. First, I called my friend Raymond Douglas. Raymond and I served together in Vietnam, then worked together at the Dot for 15 years. He retired 5 years before I did, and now spent most of his time fishing and volunteering at the VA. But before all that, Raymond had spent 20 years in Army intelligence. The man knew how to find information that didn't want to be found. "Harold," he said when he answered the phone. "It's been too long, brother. How you doing?" "I need a favor, Raymond." "Name it." I told him about Vincent R. Chambers, the business card, the Financial Solutions Group, the $87,000 my son owed. Raymond was quiet for a moment. "That's a loan shark operation, Harold. Dressed up pretty, but that's what it is." "I know. And you want to know who you're dealing with?" "I want to know everything. Background, associates, other victims, legal vulnerabilities, everything. Give me 48 hours. What Raymond found in those 48 hours made my blood run cold. Vincent Raymond Chambers, 51 years old, had been operating in Charlotte for 6 years. Before that, he'd been in Atlanta. Before that, Birmingham. Every few years, he'd move to a new city with a large, prosperous black community and set up shop. His pattern was always the same. He'd identify men with gambling problems, substance abuse issues, or financial desperation. He'd offer them business loans at interest rates that would make a credit card company blush. When they couldn't pay, he'd suggest alternatives, access to a family member's accounts, social security numbers of elderly relatives, pension information. He wasn't just a loan shark. He was running an identity theft ring targeting black families, using their own members as unwitting accomplices. Raymond found 7 families in Charlotte alone who'd been destroyed by Vincent's operation. 3 elderly parents had lost their entire retirement savings. 2 marriages had ended in divorce. One man, a 72-year-old retired postal worker named Clarence Mitchell, had lost his home of 35 years because his grandson had given Vincent access to his accounts. Clarence Mitchell lived in my neighborhood. I'd seen him at church before dollars passed. He'd moved away last year, and I'd wondered why. Now I knew. "There's more," Raymond said, his voice heavy. "Vincent's got connections, pays off the right people. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg police have received multiple complaints, but nothing ever sticks. The DA's office won't touch him. What about federal? That's where it gets interesting. The FBI has had their eye on him for 2 years. Wire fraud, identity theft, RICO violations. But they've never had enough to move. They need someone inside. Someone who can document the operation. Someone Vincent trusts." I thought about my son. About the fear in his eyes. About the $87,000 hanging over his head like a guillotine. "Raymond, I need you to connect me with someone at the FBI field office. Someone who handles financial crimes. Harold, what are you planning? I'm planning to give them what they need. And I'm planning to get my son back. Raymond was quiet for a long moment. You know this could be dangerous. I'm 68 years old, Raymond. I've been shot at by better men than Vincent Chambers. I'm not afraid. I know you're not. That's what worries me. 2 days later, I sat in a small conference room at the FBI field office on West Trade Street, across from a young agent named Marcus Williams. He was maybe 35, sharp-eyed, with the kind of quiet intensity that told me he was good at his job. I'd brought a folder. Inside was everything Raymond had found, plus copies of my security camera footage, plus a detailed timeline of my son's involvement with Vincent Chambers. Agent Williams reviewed the materials in silence for nearly 20 minutes. When he finally looked up, his expression had changed. Mr. Patterson, this is exactly what we've been looking for. But I have to be honest with you. If you help us, your son could face federal charges. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, at minimum. I understand. And you're still willing to cooperate? I leaned forward in my chair. Agent Williams, my son made a terrible mistake. He's going to have to face consequences for that, and I accept it. But Vincent Chambers is a predator. He's destroyed families all over this city. Families that look like mine. Families that look like yours. Agent Williams's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'd noticed the Alpha Phi Alpha pin on his lapel when I walked in. He understood exactly what I was saying. If my son has to pay a price to stop this man, then that's a price worth paying. But I want your word on something. What's that? If Terrence cooperates fully, if he helps you build this case, I want him to have a chance at a deal. Probation, treatment for his gambling addiction, community service. Something that lets him rebuild his life instead of rotting in a cell. Agent Williams considered this. I can't make promises. That's the U.S. Attorney's decision. But I can tell you that cooperation matters. A lot. I nodded slowly. Then let's talk about how we're going to take down Vincent Chambers. Over the next 3 weeks, I became someone I never expected to be at 68 years old. I became an informant. The plan was simple, but required patience. I would contact Vincent directly, pretending to be a desperate father willing to access my own benefits to help my son. I would wear a wire. I would document everything. And when we had enough, the FBI would move. Terrence, to his credit, agreed to cooperate the moment I told him the full scope of what Vincent had done to other families. I saw something shift in my son's eyes when I showed him the documentation. The names, the losses, the lives destroyed. He'd been so caught up in his own desperation that he hadn't seen the bigger picture. Now he did. I'm sorry, Pop, he said, and for the first time, I believed he meant it. Not sorry for getting caught. Sorry for what he'd almost become. Being sorry isn't enough, I told him. You need to make it right. Starting now. Before we continue, I want to pause for a moment. If you've ever watched someone you love spiral into addiction, if you've ever felt the helplessness of seeing a family member make choices that destroy everything, I want you to know that you're not alone. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Let's support each other. And if this content is helping you, please take a second to subscribe. We're building a community here, and your voice matters. The first meeting with Vincent Chambers took place on a Tuesday afternoon in early October. The air had that particular Charlotte crispness that comes when summer finally releases its grip, and the leaves on the old oak trees along South Boulevard were just starting to turn gold at the edges. I'd spent 3 days preparing for this moment. Agent Williams had coached me on what to say, how to act, what buttons to push. But more than that, I'd spent those 3 days looking in the mirror, practicing the face of a desperate old man willing to do anything to save his son. The truth was, I didn't have to practice much. The desperation was real. I just had to channel it in the right direction. Vincent's office was on the third floor of a modest building between a tax preparation service and a dentist's office. The kind of building designed to look legitimate. The kind of building where people went when the bank said no and the credit cards were maxed out and they didn't know where else to turn. The waiting room had leather chairs and framed motivational posters. Success is a choice. Your future starts today. Building wealth together. The receptionist, a young woman with braids and a professional smile, offered me coffee while I waited. I declined. My stomach was already churning. At 2:15 p.m. precisely, Vincent Chambers emerged from his office. He was smaller than I expected. Maybe 5'8", slim build, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my first car. His smile was warm, his handshake firm, his eyes were cold, dead. The eyes of a man who'd learned to mimic human warmth without actually feeling it. "Mr. Patterson," he said, clasping my hand with both of his. "I'm so glad you reached out. Please, come in. Let's talk about how I can help your family." I followed him into his office, acutely aware of the small recording device taped to my chest beneath my shirt. The FBI tech had assured me it was undetectable. I prayed he was right. Vincent's office was designed to impress. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, a wall of framed certificates and photographs. I noticed him shaking hands with a city councilman in one photo, standing next to a local news anchor in another. The man had cultivated connections like a farmer cultivates crops, carefully, strategically, always with an eye toward future harvest. "Please, sit," Vincent said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "No, thank you. I just want to talk about my son." Vincent nodded sympathetically, settling into his own chair behind the desk. "Of course. Terrence. He's told me a lot about you, Mr. Patterson. Your service to our country. Your career. You raised a good man. A good man who owes you $87,000. Vincent's smile flickered, just for a moment. "Terrence has found himself in a difficult situation. But that's why we're here, isn't it? To find solutions. That's what I do, Mr. Patterson. I solve problems. My son tells me you have a way to access my VA benefits. Some kind of advance program." "That's right." Vincent leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "The VA has certain flexibility in how benefits can be dispersed. For veterans in good standing like yourself, there are options that the average person doesn't know about. You just need someone who understands the system. Someone with connections." He was lying, of course. There was no such program. There was no flexibility. There was only Vincent Chambers and his network of forged documents and corrupted bank employees and stolen identities. But I played along. I let him explain the process. I let him pull out forms that looked official, but weren't. I let him quote numbers and timelines and guarantees. And all the while, the device on my chest recorded every word. "The thing is, Mr. Patterson," Vincent said, spreading his hands in a gesture of friendly openness, "I don't just want to help Terrence pay off his debt. I want to help your whole family build wealth. You've worked hard your whole life. You deserve more than just getting by. I can show you how to leverage your benefits, your pension, your assets. Turn what you have into real financial freedom. And what do you get out of this? A small percentage. Think of me as a financial advisor. I take a fee for my services, just like any professional. The difference is, I actually deliver results. Ask anyone I've worked with. I thought about Clarence Mitchell, who'd lost his home. I thought about the 7 families Raymond had documented. I thought about all the people who'd sat in this exact chair, heard this exact speech, and walked out with their futures already stolen. How do we get started?" I asked. Vincent's smile widened. "I knew you were a smart man, Mr. Patterson. Let me tell you exactly what I need from you." What he needed was everything. My Social Security number, my VA identification, banking information, pension details, next of kin, medical records. He dressed it up in language about verification and eligibility confirmation, but I knew what it was. He was collecting the pieces he needed to dismantle my financial life. I gave him some of it, enough to seem cooperative, enough to keep him interested, but not enough to actually compromise myself. Agent Williams had prepared a set of documents with slightly altered numbers, enough to satisfy Vincent's initial verification while protecting my real accounts. "This is excellent, Mr. Patterson." Vincent reviewed the papers I'd brought with obvious satisfaction. "I can start processing this immediately. We should be able to access your benefit advance within 2 weeks. And once that's done, we can talk about the larger opportunity, the wealth-building program I mentioned. And Terrence's debt will be handled. You have my word." His word. The word of a man who'd built his entire life on lies. I stood to leave, shaking his hand again, enduring his warm smile and his cold eyes. At the door, I paused. "Mr. Chambers, my son trusts you. I want to trust you too. But I'm an old soldier. I've learned to be careful. I understand completely, Mr. Patterson. Trust is earned. I look forward to earning yours." I left his office with 3 minutes of recorded conversation, a pocket full of fraudulent documents, and the beginning of a case that would eventually bring him down. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Over the next 6 weeks, I became a regular presence in Vincent Chambers' world. I attended his investment seminars at the Hilton on Tyvala Road, sitting in a conference room with 30 other desperate people while he promised them financial freedom through alternative banking strategies. I had dinner with him twice, once at a steakhouse in South Park where he spent $400 on wine alone, once at a quieter restaurant in Noda where he introduced me to 2 of his associates. Those associates were the key. The first was a man named Darnell Washington, who worked at a regional bank and processed the fraudulent documents that made Vincent's schemes possible. The second was a woman named Patricia Goines, who handled the client relations side of the business, keeping nervous victims calm while their accounts were being drained. Every meeting, every dinner, every seminar was recorded. Agent Williams and his team built their case piece by piece, like assembling a puzzle where the final picture was a prison cell. And through it all, I watched my son. Terrence had stopped gambling. Cold turkey, the day after I'd confronted him in the garage. He'd started attending meetings at a church over on Roadsells Ferry Road, sitting in a circle with other men fighting the same demon. He'd told his wife Denise everything, and while their marriage was strained, it wasn't broken. Not yet. Not if Terrence could prove he was serious about changing. I didn't tell Terrence the details of what I was doing. The less he knew, the safer he was. But I watched him from a distance, looking for signs of the man I'd raised. The man I hoped was still in there, underneath the desperation and the shame. One evening in late November, I was sitting in my living room when the phone rang. It was Raymond. "Harold, we have a problem." My stomach tightened. "What kind of problem?" "Vincent's getting suspicious. One of my sources says he's been asking questions about you. Background checks, employment history, military records. I assumed he would do that eventually. That's not the problem. The problem is, he's also been talking to someone at the VA. Someone who told him you reported your benefits card stolen back in September." I closed my eyes. Of course, Vincent had connections everywhere. It was only a matter of time before he connected the dots. How much time do I have? Not much. Maybe a week before he puts it together. Maybe less. I thanked Raymond and hung up the phone. Then I sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking about my next move. In Vietnam, there were moments when the mission changed suddenly. When the intelligence was wrong, or the enemy moved faster than expected, or a helicopter didn't arrive when it was supposed to. In those moments, you had 2 choices. retreat or adapt. I'd never been very good at retreating. The next morning, I called Agent Williams. "We need to accelerate the timeline," I said. "Vincent's going to figure out I'm working with you. We need to move before he does." Williams was quiet for a moment. "We have enough for an indictment. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. But if we move now, we might not get everyone. Darnell Washington, Patricia Goins, whoever else is in his network. If we don't move now, we might not get anyone. He'll disappear. Start over in another city. Destroy more families." Another pause. Then Williams sighed. "Let me talk to the U.S. attorney. I'll call you back within 24 hours. He called back in 6. "We're moving Friday. 3 days from now. Federal marshals will hit Vincent's office, his home, and Darnell Washington's residence simultaneously. Patricia Goins is cooperating. She reached out to us 2 weeks ago, looking for a deal. She's been providing information on the inside. What about Terrence? Your son will need to come in for questioning. But based on his cooperation, and yours, the U.S. attorney is prepared to offer a favorable deal. Probation. Mandatory treatment program. Community service. No prison time, assuming he testifies against Vincent." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Thank you, Agent Williams." "Don't thank me yet, Mr. Patterson. We still have to get through Friday. The 3 days leading up to the operation were the longest of my life." I went through my normal routines. Morning coffee, crossword puzzle, afternoon walk through the neighborhood, evening news. But underneath it all, my mind was churning, running scenarios, anticipating problems, preparing for every possible outcome. On Thursday night, the night before the operation, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to church, not for a service. The building was empty, the sanctuary dark except for a few security lights. But the doors were unlocked. They always were at Greater Mount Zion Baptist, had been for as long as I could remember. Pastor Williams, no relation to the FBI agent, believed that God's house should always be open. I sat in a pew near the back, the same pew where Daylors and I had sat every Sunday for 30 years. The same pew where we'd watched our children get baptized. The same pew where I'd sat alone after her funeral, trying to figure out how to go on without her. I didn't pray, exactly. Didn't know the right words anymore. But I sat in the silence, and I thought about the man I'd been, the man I was now, and the man I wanted to be when this was all over. I thought about my father, who'd worked at a tobacco warehouse in Durham for 42 years without ever missing a day. I thought about my mother, who'd raised 6 children on next to nothing and still managed to put something in the offering plate every Sunday. I thought about all the people who'd come before me, who'd sacrificed and struggled and persevered so that I could have the life I had. And I thought about Terrence, my son, my blood, the boy I'd failed, somehow, even though I'd tried so hard to do everything right. Where had I gone wrong? What had I missed? Was there a conversation I should have had, a warning I should have given, a moment when I could have seen the danger and steered him away from it? I didn't have answers. Maybe I never would. But sitting there in the darkness of that empty church, I made a decision. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever came after, I would not give up on my son. I would hold him accountable, yes. I would demand that he face the consequences of his choices, but I would also be there. I would be his father. Until my last breath, I would be his father. Friday morning dawned gray and cold, the kind of early December day that promises nothing good. I was awake before sunrise, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't really want, waiting for the phone to ring. It rang at 8:47 a.m. "It's done," Agent Williams said. "Vincent Chambers is in federal custody. So are Darnell Washington and 3 other associates we didn't even know about. Patricia Goins is in protective custody. It's over, Mr. Patterson." I closed my eyes and let the words wash over me. Over. After 6 weeks of living a double life, of pretending to be someone I wasn't, of carrying the weight of this secret on my shoulders every single day, it was over. What happens now? Now we build the case for trial. Your recordings, the documents, Patricia's testimony. Vincent Chambers is going away for a very long time. Federal charges carry mandatory minimums. He's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. 15 to 20 years. Vincent Chambers would be an old man when he got out, if he got out at all. And Terrence? He needs to come in today. We'll take his statement, formalize his cooperation agreement. My recommendation stands. Probation, treatment, community service. But he has to commit to the process. No more shortcuts. He will. I'll make sure of it. I hung up the phone and sat in the silence for a moment longer. Then I picked up the phone again and called my son. Terrence, it's over. Vincent's been arrested. Silence on the other end. Then a sound I hadn't heard from my son in decades. He was crying. Deep, shuddering sobs that came from somewhere far beneath the surface. Pop, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I know, son. I know. Now come home. We've got work to do. The next few months were a process of rebuilding. Terrence cooperated fully with the federal investigation. He testified before a grand jury, providing details about how Vincent had recruited him, how the operation worked, how the pressure had escalated until he felt like there was no way out. The U.S. attorney kept her word. Terrence received 3 years of probation, mandatory attendance at a gambling addiction program, and 200 hours of community service. He also got something else. Something that couldn't be measured in legal terms. He got a second chance. I watched my son work for it, day by day, meeting by meeting, hour by hour of community service. He volunteered at a financial literacy program run by the Urban League, teaching young people about the dangers of predatory lending. He spoke at churches about his experience, warning others about the Vincent Chamberses of the world. He went to his meetings every Tuesday and Thursday, sat in that circle, and did the hard work of understanding how he'd gotten so lost. His marriage survived. Denise was a stronger woman than either of them had realized. She didn't forgive easily, and she didn't forget, but she stayed. And slowly, painfully, they rebuilt their trust. As for me, I found myself thinking a lot about legacy. Not the big things. Not the medals or the degrees or the buildings I'd helped design. The small things. The daily choices that add up over a lifetime to form the shape of a man. I thought about my father again. How he'd worked those 42 years at the warehouse, coming home every night smelling like tobacco, hands rough as sandpaper, back bent from lifting bales that weighed almost as much as he did. He never complained. Never said he deserved better. Just did his job and loved his family and tried to leave the world a little better than he found it. That's what I wanted. That's all any of us can want, really. To leave the world a little better. To make sure the people we love know they're loved. To face the hard moments with courage and the easy moments with gratitude. In late February, 4 months after Vincent's arrest, I got a letter in the mail from Clarence Mitchell, the 72-year-old retired postal worker who'd lost his home because of Vincent's schemes. His grandson had cooperated with the investigation too, it turned out. And the FBI's Asset Forfeiture Division had recovered enough of Vincent's ill-gotten gains to provide restitution to some of his victims. Clarence had received a check. Not enough to buy back his old house, but enough to start over somewhere modest, somewhere safe. Mr. Patterson, the letter read, I don't know you, but Agent Williams told me what you did. He told me you wore a wire. You sat across from that devil, and you pretended to be his friend, just so he could be brought to justice. You didn't have to do that. You could have just protected your own and let the rest of us fend for ourselves. But you didn't. You stood up. For all of us. For our community, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer with my bronze star and my marriage certificate and the last birthday card Dolores ever gave me. The artifacts of a life. The proof that I was here, that I mattered, that I tried. On a warm Sunday in March, I sat on my back porch with Terrence. The azaleas were blooming in the garden Dolores had planted 20 years ago. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and something floral I couldn't quite identify. We didn't talk for a long time. Just sat there, father and son, watching the light change as the afternoon stretched toward evening. Finally, Terrence spoke. "Pop, how did you know? How did you know I was in trouble before I even told you?" I considered the question. "I didn't know," I said finally. "Not for sure. But I knew something was wrong. A father knows. Even when he doesn't want to. And you didn't give up on me." "No. Why not? After what I did? After I stole from you. Most people would have walked away." I turned to look at my son. Really look at him. At the gray appearing at his temples. The lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. The weight of experience settling into his features. "Because that's not what we do," I said. "That's not who we are. The people who came before us, our ancestors, they didn't give up when things got hard. They didn't walk away when the people they loved made mistakes. They held on. They persevered. They believed that redemption was always possible, that no one was beyond saving, that love was stronger than failure." I paused, watching a cardinal land on the fence at the edge of the yard. Dolores had loved cardinals. Said they were messages from heaven. "You made a mistake, Terrence, a big one. You let desperation drive you somewhere you never should have gone. But a mistake isn't the same as who you are. A mistake is something you did. Who you are is something you choose, every single day, with every single action. And you've been choosing differently. I can see it. Your mother would be proud." Terrence's eyes were wet. "You really think so?" "I know so. She always believed in you, even when you didn't deserve it. Especially then." We sat in silence again. The cardinal flew away. The shadows lengthened. Somewhere down the block, I could hear children playing, their laughter carrying on the spring breeze. "Pop," Terrence said eventually, "what you did, going undercover like that, that was dangerous. You could have been hurt. Vincent had people, bad people. If he'd found out, I know. Why did you do it? Just for me? You could have let the FBI handle it themselves. You didn't have to get involved." I thought about how to answer, about all the different ways I could explain what had driven me to put that recording device under my shirt and walk into a predator's office at 68 years old. "It wasn't just for you," I said finally. "It was for Clarence Mitchell. For the 7 families Raymond documented. For everyone Vincent had hurt, and everyone he was going to hurt if someone didn't stop him. But yes, it was also for you. Because I needed you to see something." "What?" "That your father wasn't going to let you face this alone. That even when you'd done wrong, even when you betrayed my trust, I was still going to fight for you. Not by protecting you from consequences. You needed those consequences. But by fighting alongside you, by showing you what it means to stand up when standing up is hard." I looked at my son, holding his gaze. "I wanted you to see that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act anyway. I wanted you to see that a man can be 68 years old, with bad knees and a torn rotator cuff, and more reasons to stay home than to get involved, and still choose to do the right thing. Because that's the legacy I want to leave you, Terrence. Not money, not property. This, the knowledge that your father stood for something. The example of what it means to be a man." Terrence was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick. "I'm going to make you proud, Pop. I promise. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. I'm going to make you proud. You already have, son. You already have. The trial of Vincent Chambers took place in federal court in Charlotte the following September. I testified for 2 days, walking the jury through every recorded conversation, every fraudulent document, every calculated lie. Terrence testified too, his voice steady, his account detailed and damning. Vincent sat at the defense table throughout, wearing that same charcoal suit, that same calculated smile. But his eyes were different now. The coldness was still there, but underneath it, I saw something else. Fear. The fear of a predator who's finally become the prey. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, racketeering, money laundering. 15 charges in total, each one a nail in the coffin of his criminal empire. The judge sentenced him to 23 years in federal prison. Darnell Washington got 12. The other associates received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years, depending on their level of involvement. After the sentencing, Agent Williams found me in the hallway outside the courtroom. "Mr. Patterson," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I've been doing this job for 12 years. I've worked with a lot of cooperating witnesses, but I've never worked with anyone quite like you." "I just did what needed to be done." "No," Williams said. "You did more than that. You showed this community what one person can accomplish when they refuse to accept injustice. The people Vincent victimized, they know your name now. They know what you sacrificed. They know that someone cared enough to fight for them." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. "This isn't official," he said. "The Bureau doesn't have a procedure for this. But a few of us, we wanted you to have something. To say thank you." Inside the box was a small pen. An eagle in flight, carrying an olive branch. Beneath it, the words, "For service above self." "It's not a medal," Williams said. "Just something a buddy of mine makes for people who deserve recognition. But I thought you should have it." I looked at the pen for a long moment. Then I looked at Agent Williams. "Thank you," I said. "I'll treasure this." And I meant it. Not because of what it represented officially, but because of what it represented personally. Proof that an old man could still make a difference. Proof that standing up, even when it's hard, matters. That night, I sat on my back porch with a glass of bourbon and watched the stars come out. The same stars I'd watched as a young soldier in Vietnam, terrified and brave and utterly uncertain of the future. The same stars I'd watched with Dolores on 1,000 summer evenings, her hand in mine, her laughter carrying on the warm North Carolina air. The same stars my father had watched from his porch in Durham, and his father had watched from a sharecropper's cabin in Georgia, and his father had watched from God knows where. Generations reaching back into history, each one facing their own challenges, their own moments of crisis, their own opportunities to choose courage or cowardice. I'd made my choice, and I could live with it. If you've stayed with me until now, I want to thank you. This story, it wasn't easy to tell. There are parts of it I'm not proud of. Times when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I was doing the right thing, when the weight of it all felt like more than I could carry. But that's life, isn't it? None of us get through without scars. None of us get through without making mistakes, without hurting the people we love, without facing moments when we don't know if we have the strength to continue. What matters isn't whether we stumble. What matters is whether we get back up. My son stumbled. He stumbled badly, but he got back up. And he's still getting up every single day, choosing to be better than he was yesterday. That's all any of us can do. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of struggles in your own family, if it gave you hope that redemption is possible, even after betrayal, even after the worst mistakes, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We're not just building a channel here. We're building a community. A community of people who understand that karma isn't about revenge. It's about natural consequences. A community of people who believe in second chances, in accountability, in the power of dignity and patience and wisdom. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with me. And remember, no matter how old you are, no matter how tired you are, no matter how many reasons you have to give up and walk away, it's never too late to stand for something. My name is Harold Eugene Patterson. I'm 68 years old. I'm a veteran, a father, a widower, and apparently an FBI informant, and I wouldn't change a thing. God bless you, and God bless the families who are fighting their own battles tonight. You're not alone. I'll see you in the next story.